A summer to remember, lessons I learned from my mom. You know, some summers fade into a blur of long days and warm nights, but there's always that one summer, the one that stays with you forever. For me, that was the summer I spent with my mom in a small coastal town. I didn't realize it back then, but that summer would shape who I became. It wasn't about big adventures or fancy vacations. It was about quiet moments, unexpected lessons, and the kind of love that only a mother can give. I was 16 that year, old enough to think I knew everything, but young enough to still need guidance. My mom had just decided to take a break from her job. She called it a pause to breathe. I didn't really understand what she meant. I just thought it meant we were going to have a fun summer somewhere new. She picked this tiny seaside village, far away from the noise of the city. No malls, no fast food, barely any signal. Honestly, I was annoyed at first. I thought I'd die of boredom. But I didn't know that summer would give me the best memories and the biggest lessons of my life. The day we arrived, the air smelled like salt and wildflowers. The waves rolled lazily along the shore, and the sound of gulls filled the sky. Mom smiled the whole time, like she'd finally found peace. I, on the other hand, was glued to my phone, trying to find a signal. She laughed and said, "Maybe the universe wants you to look up once in a while." I rolled my eyes, but she wasn't wrong. Our house was small, painted white with a red roof, sitting right by the cliffs. Every morning, the sunlight would pour through the window, and I'd hear Mom humming as she made breakfast. She'd always start the day with something simple: eggs, toast, maybe fruit from the local market. She said cooking was her quiet time. I never understood how chopping vegetables could make someone happy. But that summer, I started to notice the rhythm in her actions, the patience, the care, the little rituals that made everything feel warm and safe. One morning, she woke me up early, like really early. The sky was still pink, and the world was half asleep. She said, "Come on, we're going to watch the sunrise." I groaned, but I followed her anyway. We sat on the beach, wrapped in blankets, watching the sun peek over the water. I remember her saying, "Every sunrise is a reminder that we get another chance to do things better." It sounded like something from a greeting card, but somehow, it stuck with me. Later that day, we went to the local market. It wasn't like the ones in the city, no bright lights or polished stores. Just wooden stalls, friendly faces, and the smell of the sea. Everyone there knew my mom after a few days. She had this way of connecting with people instantly. She'd smile, ask how they were, remember their names. I used to get impatient. I'd stand there waiting, wondering why she bothered talking so much. But then one of the shopkeepers, an old man with kind eyes, said to me, "Your mother has a rare gift, she listens." I didn't really get it at the time. But I'd soon understand. One afternoon, a storm rolled in. The sky darkened, and the waves crashed harder than I'd ever seen. Power went out, the house went dark, and the only sound was the wind howling outside. I remember feeling nervous. I wasn't scared of storms, but something about that night felt heavy. Mom lit a candle, sat beside me, and said, "You can't control the storm, but you can choose how to face it." She wasn't just talking about the weather. I didn't realize it then, but that line became one of the biggest lessons I carried with me later in life. When the storm passed, we went outside to see the damage. A few trees had fallen, and the little pier was half broken. The whole town was out, helping clean up. Without hesitation, my mom joined in sweeping debris, helping the fishermen, comforting kids who were scared. Watching her, I felt something shift inside me. It was the first time I really saw her not just as my mom, but as a strong, kind, determined person who made the world around her better. A few days later, I finally asked her, "Why do you help everyone, even when you don't have to?" She smiled and said, "Because someone once did the same for me." She never explained what she meant, but her voice had that softness, the kind that carries both pain and gratitude. I didn't press her for details, but I never forgot that answer. We fell into a rhythm that summer: mornings on the beach, afternoons exploring, and long talks under the stars. Mom would tell me stories about her childhood, her dreams, her mistakes. She said life isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. She told me that sometimes silence teaches you more than words. And she taught me that happiness doesn't always look like fireworks. Sometimes it's just a cup of tea, shared in peace. There was one evening that stood out more than any other. The sky was glowing orange, and we were walking barefoot along the water. I asked her, "Are you happy, Mom?" She stopped, thought for a moment, and said, "I'm learning to be." That answer stayed with me. I realized then that happiness isn't a destination, it's a process, something you practice. The end of the summer came faster than I expected. I didn't want to leave. The girl who had arrived with her head buried in her phone was now someone who watched sunsets and laughed without worrying about WIF. Mom looked at me and said, "See? You didn't need much to feel alive." I smiled, but deep down, I knew she'd given me something priceless: perspective. When we packed up to go home, I noticed Mom standing quietly, looking at the sea. I asked if she was sad to leave. She said, "No, just grateful." I didn't understand how you could be both, but now I do. Gratitude is what turns moments into memories. Years later, I still think about that summer. Whenever life gets too loud, I remember the sound of waves, the smell of salt in the air, and my mom's laughter echoing across the shore. I think about her lessons, how she taught me to slow down, to listen, to care deeply, and to face storms with grace. She passed away a few years after that summer. It was sudden, and it hurt more than I can describe. But whenever I close my eyes, I'm back there sitting beside her on the beach, watching the sunrise, hearing her say, "Every day is another chance to do better." And somehow, that makes me smile. Now, every summer, I visit that same seaside town. The market's still there, the cliffs are the same, and the sunsets still paint the sky. I bring flowers, walk the beach, and whisper thank you. Because that summer wasn't just a vacation, it was a chapter of love, growth, and understanding. It taught me that the best moments in life aren't always loud or dramatic. They're the quiet ones, the ones that sneak up on you and stay forever. It taught me that a mother's love doesn't end, it simply changes form, living on in the lessons we carry. Whenever someone asks me what I learned from my mom, I tell them this: she taught me how to see beauty in simplicity, how to find peace in chaos, and how to live with an open heart. She taught me that life will throw storms your way, but if you face them with kindness and courage, you'll always find your way back to the light. And that's why that summer will always be the one I remember most. Not because of where we went or what we did, but because of who I became beside her. It was a summer of love, laughter, and lessons that shaped my soul. So if you ever get the chance to slow down, to step away from the noise, do it. Spend time with the people who matter. Watch the sunrise. Help someone without expecting anything back. Listen more, talk less, and don't rush through the moments that make life beautiful. Because one day, when you look back, you'll realize those small, ordinary moments were the big ones all along. And that's what my mom taught me one unforgettable summer.